Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco, comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
Hi, and welcome to this week's Sidebar. We're here to discuss episode 3 of Proof Season 2, Murder at the Warehouse. In this episode, Secrets Don't Last, we finally meet the state's star witness, Josh Burrows. But before we begin, I want to put a call out to anyone out there who might have information related to this case. We would very much love to hear from you. Even if what you know you might think seems small or probably not important, well, it might be. So if you think you know something that's relevant to the show, to the case, or that we might just find interesting, seriously, hit us up. You won't be wasting our time. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Give us a call or message us or send us an email. Our email is proofcrimepod@gmail.com. Our phone number is 929-267-3172. That's 929-267-3172. Or message us on Facebook. We're at Proof Crime Pod.
For instance, in this episode, you heard about how Josh Burrows was invited to the Home Depot party by a guy going by the nickname of Rapper Delight, or possibly Rapster, who, for the record, is not actually Richard Ornelas, like Josh Burrows says. But if you happen to be in Manteca in the late 90s or early 2000s and happen to be acquainted with Mr. Rapster Delight, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Mainly because it'll stop Susan from talking about it.
That's why. I was going to say, if anyone knows, I'd be eternally grateful if they would reach out.
Or Rapper Delight himself. Give me a call. Love to hear from you.
I don't think I can hear Susan turn to one more person and say, hey, do you know who Rapper Delight might be?
Yes. Do us all a favor and please call.
Like, I think you even asked the person at the In-N-Out Burger or something.
I think she
try. So this week, we finally find out about the party, which is the core of the state's case. Basically, the idea is that a bunch of teenagers, plus, Ty Lopes, were partying at the almost finished Home Depot in Manteca that was being built. And in the middle of the party, 5-6 guys basically pull Renee to the middle of everything and rape and kill her, while others watched on horrified, but no one but Josh Burrows makes an attempt to stop it. Now, this is like the centerpiece of the state's case. Like, this is the case. And generally, when I'm looking into a case, I give what the state believes happened, full consideration, complete respect. But I think here we were all in agreement that we couldn't pretend to believe the narrative that was put forth or ask our listeners to believe that, knowing that essentially the emperor has no clothes. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, I think going into it, it sounded a little ridiculous that there are that many people at a party and no one's tried to stop this murder and rape from happening. So in my mind, I had thought, well, maybe if there was a party, everyone left and it was just Ty, Jake, Renee in the end, different scenarios that could possibly explain that there had been a party. There is no evidence to support that or any type of party ever happening.
Yeah. We've spoken to a lot of people, and I am beyond confident that if there had been a party like Josh Burrows describes, we would have encountered someone who had knowledge of it.
Well, the crux of it was that they're basically contending that there are dozens of kids, maybe as many as 4 dozen kids, from what my recollection is. And nobody that you spoke to, or nobody that you spoke to when I was on the trips as well, not one person was at the party. And we spoke to a number of people who would have been at the party had the party taken place. So you have to question whether the party actually took place.
Yeah. And I mean, even aside from the fact that no one but Josh Burrows says they were at the party, there's no evidence supporting the idea, like physically or situationally, there was no indication that there'd been a party there. And I think the the first giant red flag for me looking at the case file is that there were 6 guys living next to the Home Depot, like in trailers, workers who you didn't want to leave or go far. So they just had a trailer on site next to the Home Depot. And none of them heard a party. You heard from one of them on the show, actually. He was like, if there had been that many kids partying there, the guys who were living right there in a trailer would have seen it.
Yeah, that's pretty telling, because I remember when I first got to Manteca, it was like, why would these guys be staying at the construction site? But then you all pointed out to me, town wasn't built up then, right? Mm-hmm. So they had no choice really but to stay in these trailers.
Yeah, they were guys who were only in town to work in place, so they didn't even really leave ever. They just worked, got the job done, and left for a new site.
And they would have heard if there was a party with dozens of kids.
Mm-hmm. I mean, theoretically, it's possible that a smaller group could have been there and escaped detection. You know, if maybe, I don't know how many, like, sure, it's conceivable that 3 or 4 people could have walked over there and not been noticed. But just the scale of the party that Josh describes, no way.
Well, even if, let's say, they were away for a few hours or for a night or whatever, there was still no physical evidence of a party, right? So not only did they not hear the party, but there was no beer cans, no cigarette butts, no trash. There was nothing left behind from a group of kids having a party. And that also is just too hard to believe.
You can't get dozens of kids to clean up their party at a Home Depot warehouse.
Well, what if you offer them a tiny baggie of weed? But more on that next episode. But you know what? Proving a negative is hard. Like, trying to prove something didn't happen is a difficult proposition. But this podcast is kind of a great opportunity for that. Because, hey, if there's someone out there who missed, if there's someone who really was at this party and here's the show, let us know. Like, if this party actually happened, I feel pretty confident this podcast will be heard by the people who are there. So why do detectives believe that this party happened? Well, because of Josh Burrows. Josh Burrows was, he was 14 when this happened, when Renee went missing and was killed. So he was younger than most other people you'll hear about on the show. But he actually did know Fuji. He hung out at Fuji's place sometimes, which is how he ended up knowing Jake. So he was friends with a lot of these people, even if he was, a freshman when they were all 17, 18 mostly.
The interesting thing about Josh Burrows is nobody else says that there was a party, that they attended the party. But when this person is the only eyewitness, you have to factor in here that nobody else is saying it. And I know that in the coming episodes, we're going to be looking at Josh Burrows and what he says and his story. And I think that the audience will find that all shocking and compelling.
Yeah, this happened for a reason. This wasn't just something that came up out of the blue.
When I was speaking to the two of you when you were on the road and talking to him, I know that I was completely astonished when you started to fill in the gaps for me.
Yeah. So I've got a question for both of you. Have you ever tried hot damn cinnamon schnapps?
I have not. Kevin?
What is it again?
Hot damn cinnamon schnapps, my favorite.
I've certainly had my fair share of schnapps, probably around when I was 14, but no, I can't say that I have.
I mean, yeah, that part of Josh's story actually tracks. Like, that totally makes sense. Is what a 14-year-old kid is going to be buying from the grocery store.
That's what you can get your hands on when you're 14, right? So,
yeah. Well, he could technically get his hands on everything. His story is that 33-year-old Ty Lopes went out and bought it for him.
Yeah, that's true. You just don't know any better at 14, I guess.
And we got a question from Anna on Twitter, and she asked, where was the 14-year-old child's legal representative or guardian and when the interrogation was taking place? And the answer is not there at the police station, because it didn't have to be. And the detectives in this case interviewed lots and lots of minors, and there's no indication they were particularly concerned about getting parental, not even approval, but parental notification was happening, because they don't have to. There was no requirement that a minor's parents have any involvement, knowledge, or giving permission for them to talk to the cops.
So that sort of stunned me. So I was curious to ask the two of you, and particularly you, Susan, as a lawyer, how is that possible? We all have this idea in our head that as a minor, police are required to get, parental consent for an interview, but that's not the case here.
Is that like a thing in Law and Order? Is that what people think this? Because I know it's like a common belief, but it's just not true. There's no requirement for that in most states. It definitely was not here at that time in California. It's kind of funny though, like obviously minors do have some restrictions or something parents have to be involved in. So here's what happens during Josh's interrogation when he makes a request of the detectives.
I got a very bad headache. I'd give you some Advil, but we'd probably have to call your dad to get permission to do that because you're not 18. Yeah.
So they can question him without anyone there, but he can't get an Advil.
Yeah.
That's right. That's just nuts.
So at the time in California, there's no difference here. Minors had no particular restriction on how they were talked to, interrogated, Mirandized, none of that. Now, in 2018 in California, they actually did start passing laws that have changed that slightly, where for juveniles of various ages, I think actually they've now stepped up to 18 all the way. But essentially, like a 15-year-old cannot waive their constitutional rights without a mandatory consultation with a lawyer. So
they can't waive their Miranda rights without a lawyer being there to explain it to them.
Or talk to you. Usually it's like Skype or phone,
But that's only if they're under arrest.
I was just sort of stunned because it's always been my impression that for anything, you have to get parental consent. And I guess I'm just naive. What was the deal with Kane? Like when Kane was getting worked over by Dallas Battle, they didn't need parental consent?
No, I mean, his mom, I believe, was in the other room, but he just went into the interview room or the office by himself. No lawyer and his...
I had always assumed when we talked about it that Dallas Battle had basically done that illegally or claimed that his mother gave him permission. But as I'm understanding it now, he didn't actually need her permission.
No.
They often ask for it, but it's not needed.
So they can't fucking vote, but they can be interrogated by police without an adult there.
They can't even get an Advil from the cops to deal with their headache. They have to.
But they can be interrogated and they can be asked questions without an adult.
I think they wouldn't use the word interrogated. I think they'd use the word questioned.
It's a horrifying subject when you get into it because people assume there's protections here because they want to not see things like this happen. And yet they do. In this particular instance for Josh, his mom and stepdad actually were well aware of the various interrogations. And for a few interviews actually happened at Josh's house. You can even hear him in the background, like doing chores and like putzing around. So they were aware of it. They didn't object to any of it. They didn't care. So they were not going to stop the cops that had asked for permission. But later on, Josh does say things that technically could have been construed criminally. If the cops had wanted to go for him, they very likely could have. They didn't want to, obviously, but that doesn't mean he didn't put himself in jeopardy by doing this. I mean, it's not just Josh, too. Obviously, like Jake Silva, prime example, someone who needs to know right to silence exists and does not know that.
It's also like Jake doesn't think he has anything to hide. It doesn't occur to him not to answer the questions.
It does not, and it should have.
Yeah.
I think from sort of watching and listening to Jake's interrogation, and I thought this from the very beginning when I first saw it, he's actually looking to figure out what happened.
Yeah. And they tell him that. They say like, hey, we know you love Renee and you want to help figure out what happened to her. So you got to help us figure that out by coming talk to us whenever we want to talk to you.
I start to think like the clips that are played in this past episode where they're telling him, you're at the Home Depot and we know this and all this stuff. And he's like, I don't remember, like I wasn't there. He genuinely thinks like she may have been there at a party. Like he's confused.
Yeah, he does not know the cops can lie to him. He has no idea detectives can tell him something's untrue. The only thing he really pushes back hard on is when they start telling him Josh's story about how, some of the kids were skateboarding by flashlight through the Home Depot. And that he's like, wait a minute, I would definitely remember if that happened. I might believe that you know the truth better than I do, but that one, I'm pretty sure I would remember if that had been real.
Yeah, he's like, maybe I can believe I was at a party and
Forgot
because I got too drunk or whatever, but I would remember candles and skateboarding.
Yeah, and that had never sort of dawned on me before that it was that pitch black. Fuji sort of drove that home for me in the episode. This is not possible. Like we couldn't have been doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, where's the candle wax and where are the leftover candles? And
I mean, Josh's story has some problems and we're going to get more into that next week. But for now, to give you an idea of like why investigators maybe should not put all their faith in Josh Burrows, let's take the issue of when this party happened. Now, you heard in the episode, and then as was said at trial, that the party happens like roughly on Memorial Day, maybe after, but like, roughly that time period. But here's like Josh's full answer when detectives ask him when the party happened.
Okay, then. And that was back in what month? Do you remember? Memorial?
I remember it being Memorial Day, but I think it was March or April. I know it was close to 420 because that's Pothead's holiday. I think it was a month after that.
So you think it was around the holiday though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I know for a fact.
so you can hear Josh in this clip say, I think it was March or April. I know it was close to 420 because that's potheads all day. But obviously 420 is not Memorial Day. Like Josh is maybe talking about an actual party that happened sometime, somewhere. But what he's talking about did not happen between Memorial Day and May, the end of May, and when Renee's body was found.
It happened in the March Memorial Day, obviously.
March.
Even if he had been talking about some party that happened at Home Depot, I mean, certainly somebody else would have remembered it being in April, not May. And just nobody seems to remember it at all.
Yeah. All right, so Jacinda, you and I work on cases all over the US. And while working on them, we often subscribe to local papers, local resources, in order to learn about the case and find out new info.
It's true. But the problem is once we're done with researching that particular case, we don't need the subscription anymore. But I always forget to end my subscription.
Me too. It's embarrassing. I'll forget I've done it. And then a year later, I get an alert from the Kalamazoo paper. I'm like, what the heck did I just purchase?
Yeah, but I have newspaper subscriptions across the country. I wish there was a company that could help me manage all of my subscriptions.
And get rid of them when you're done? Well, luckily there is. Rocket Money is what you need.
Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills.
With Rocket Money, I can see all of my subscriptions. And they're in one place where if I see something I don't want, I can cancel it right then and there. Bye-bye, Kalamazoo paper.
They'll even try to give you a refund for the last couple of months of wasted money and negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest.
Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year, with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions.
That's a lot of money over a year.
Yeah, I don't even want to know how much let's not even talk about that part. Let's get Rocket Money going forward and have it not be a problem.
I mean, imagine the number of Manhattans I could buy for $720.
Depends which town you're in.
True. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/proof.
That's rocketmoney.com/proof.
rocketmoney.com/proof.
You know that's the sound of another sale on your online Shopify store. But did you know Shopify powers selling in person too? That's right, Shopify is the sound of selling everywhere, online, in-store, on social media, and beyond. Cha-ching!
Shopify Point of Sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person.
With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock.
Connect with customers in line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond.
And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution.
Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way.
Do retail right with Shopify.
Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/prooftruecrime, all lowercase.
Go to shopify.com/prooftruecrime to take your retail business to the next level today.
That's shopify.com/prooftruecrime.
So as a result of Josh Burrows' story, the detectives end up arresting 3 men, Jake, Ty, and Ray. And you hear for the first time from Ty, sort of, from part of his interrogation. Now, Manteca Police has declined our request to access the audio of that interview. They gave it to Real Interrogations, don't want to give it to us. Can't imagine why. But you also heard this episode about an incident that happened before all this between Jake and Renee and Ty. The word they use in the transcripts in the court is molesting. They say that Ty molested Renee. I'll just use their verbiage, although I'm not sure that's how I describe it. But essentially, there was one night when Jake and Renee have nowhere else to go, and rather than sleep in a park or something, they end up getting an offer from Ty to sleep on his floor. So they do that. And in the middle of the night, Renee wakes Jake up frantic and says Ty was trying to reach down her pants. So, they flee the room. And then later, when Jake sees Ty on the street, pushes him down, kicks him in the head. Now, all of this definitely happened. The story you hear on the show is from Jake, but it's something that Ty verifies indirectly. He he massively distorts and downplays the incident of both like the molestation of Renee and the battery later on, but he does confirm something like that happens. And we also know that Renee told at least a couple people at the time this was all happening about it. So it's not something that Jake's making up. It's real. This thing happened. And I mean, on the one hand, it does show that Jake and Ty did hang out together. They had a history of hanging out and knowing one another. On the other, though, it makes Ty an extremely odd choice of accomplice for a crime like this.
Right, because why, after Ty did this to Renee, why would Jake go to Ty and be like, hey, do you want to kill Renee with me? Like, why would he ever consider approaching Ty?
Yeah. And it's Jake who first names Ty as a suspect when they're asking him that first interrogation, who could have done this? Who do you think it was? And he says, well, Ty's probably pissed at me because I kicked him in the head.
I had a question about this. So are they still hanging out after this happens?
Ty
and Jake?
No.
Well, no. The story that Jake would say is no. The story that the prosecution would say is yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the interesting things, is that if they're not hanging out, it's incredibly unlikely that they would somehow even be together to do something like this.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. And the prosecution does have a way of trying to repair that, which we'll hear about later on. But they obviously knew it was a problem for them because it makes it hard to understand how these dynamics even could have played out.
I think one of the things that stood out for me in the episode and the interrogations is they're basically telling Jake that Ty said X, and they're telling Ty that Jake said X.
Yep.
And that's like, there's nothing illegal about them doing that. I just think that they're basing everything on this one eyewitness testimony from Josh Burrows, and they're creating another scenario inside the minds of these two suspects. And, when people start telling you things, I think certainly in Jake's case, you assume that you're being told something that's accurate, and that creates problems in a person's mind.
Yeah, although I think for Jake, for him, it made more sense that Ty would say some crazy shit about him. So I don't think he was fazed by that.
I kind of disagree with that. I think Jake, it just confused him even more. Like, why would Ty say that? Why would he even say that? You can hear kind of the frustration and the confusion in his voice. And like Kevin said, he has no reason to question what the detectives are telling him. He believes them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it starts to become this situation where he's wondering why these people are saying he's at this party or something, because he's just confused because he doesn't know anything about it. And I think he's operating under the idea that everything he's being told is accurate.
Yeah. Although he does say at one point, it's like, can you tell me who's saying this? What if it's someone who has a grudge against me and is lying about it? So I guess in his head, he's thinking maybe someone who doesn't like him or, is mad at him because of Renee would be making some lies to the cops. But yeah.
There's almost like this naivete to that, right? Like he's giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. Oh, maybe it's somebody who doesn't like me. I don't think he grasps the fact that he's playing for his life right now.
No, he definitely does not. In a lot of respects, Jake would be the perfect setup for a wrongful confession. Like that, it has a lot of the elements that you see in a lot of false confession cases. Not a minor, but very close to being one, just a month away from being a minor, basically. Not that well educated, not well versed in how the legal system works, emotional, desperate, cornered, intense pressure tactics, like a lot of the stuff that you expect to see in a false confession case is there. But I actually kind of believe that Jake would never have falsely confessed. Like that's just not even on the menu for him. Like it doesn't even occur to him that's an option.
Yeah, because he's not going to say something. I mean, from my impression of the interrogation, he's not going to say something that he didn't do.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you. I don't think he'd be one of those people where if he was told, like, if you confess, like this ends and you can go home. I think he'd stay there for all time. Just say, well, I didn't do anything. So
now, a lot of you guys had questions about what was going on with Jake and Renee and why they were out in the streets and what exactly their situation was. On the show, you've heard people describe the way they were living as basically fine, just kind of a thing kids did. And you've heard others kind of express more concern and alarm about it, and that they didn't think it was a great situation for Renee, or for Jake for that matter, to be in. And I think both things here are true in a way. This was more than just kids being kids. And quite frankly, this is not something that someone does when everything in their life is, perfectly rosy and fine. But also, it's not as extreme a thing to be doing as it might seem to some listeners. It was definitely a more normalized behavior for their circle in that place and time.
I didn't find it shocking when I was out there working with you guys on the story. It all seemed to make sense. Like, this is just how that group of kids functioned, and nobody would have thought it was crazy. And had Jake not broken the windshield, they would have just been living in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look on our Facebook page, the Proof Facebook page, a lot of people have written in from Manteca who lived there during this time period and who have expressed like, this wasn't out of the ordinary. This is just what we did back then. So I think you're right. For people listening who aren't familiar with that kind of lifestyle or those choices, it's going to raise flags. But at this time, for this group of kids,
it still raise flags, though. There's still something. It's still a sign something was amiss, I think.
It's a little off, I mean, in my opinion, but it's also a different town back then. Like, it just didn't seem like it was probably nearly as dangerous living on the street then as it would be now.
Yeah. Anyway, I figured I'd let Jake answer some of the more specific questions that we got since, he's the one who was there living it at the time. A lot of people had the sort of similar thoughts that I did, quite frankly, when I started working on the case, that Renee and you were either on drugs or else that Renee was engaged in prostitution to try and get by.
Nah, she never did no shit like that. No. There was no drugs involved either. We drank, like I said, we drank, and King Cobra and Steel Reserve 211 was our favorites, but no drugs, and she wasn't prostituting. She wasn't getting along with her mom. I wasn't getting along with my dad. That was the only way we could be together, and it felt good. It was a great feeling, being able to do whatever we wanted. We had a car. We had to do whatever we wanted. It was a great feeling, especially being 18, 17, 18.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident were you that she was not prostituting?
100%. Why, was she behind my back or something?
No. Do you get why people would look at this case and wonder that, though?
I guess, yeah. Like, as I was dialing your number, calling you back, I was thinking about that. Like, no, it would have never happened. That would have never went down. Fuck no. As jealous as I was, and as much as I loved Renee, fuck, hell no.
So there's one thing I think Jake is a little wrong about, in his mind, and in the minds of a lot of people actually who knew Renee. There's sort of this idea that Renee left home to be with him, that Jake's the reason Renee left her house and stopped living with her family. But I think the idea that it was all about Jake doesn't quite fit what was happening. It wasn't just about Jake. We talked to Renee's friend Jackie, who you'll hear from more later in the season, but she showed us a scrapbook she'd made of things from Renee from back then, and told us what she was like. Here's a clip.
But she really wanted kids, wanted a family. Like there was in that scrapbook, there was, when you were flipping and I saw the color, I was like, oh, there was a wheel we had to make in home ec, and it was our 5-year plan goal, and so I think that
I saw the wheel in there.
The wheel, yeah. So that's what that was. That was from our home ec class after she passed. Our home ec teacher, she ended up giving it to me.
Wait, so what were her goals?
So hers was graduate, get married, quit smoking, move out in April, which I don't know why April was a significant month for her, but move out in April and then get a job.
She turned 18 in April.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. April 17th would have been. Mm-hmm. So then she would have been like, peace out, I'm an actual adult, so
so she
bye.
Really was plotting this.
Yeah,
and this was made the first week of junior year, second period, apparently. So, and back then school started at the very, very end of August or the very first week of September is the time frame this would have been made.
So she was plotting that for some time.
Yeah, beginning of junior year.
So in that clip, you can hear Renee's friend talk about this project and that she had a plan to leave home when she turned 18. And this was a plan that she noted at the beginning of when Jake and Renee had just started dating. But it seems like it's something she had talked about and thought about. So maybe it was an idea she had in mind already, and Jake was just someone who helped her achieve that dream, if you want to call it that.
I just never take anything that anyone says as face value at that age. But
maybe that's true, but it does to me at least indicate that the idea of leaving, it didn't originate with Jake anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it originated with Jake. I think Renee wanted to leave home, probably wanted to be independent, wanted to start her life. And Jake was someone who it just happened to work out with, that she did that. She found the courage or whatever, the drive, whatever she needed to actually make it happen.
Yeah. So next week, episode 4, we're going to hear more about Ty Lopes and who he was and how he got involved in this case and what happened at his trial. So tune in then, and we'll catch you next week on the Sidebar.
You've been listening to Proof Sidebar, a podcast by Red Marble Media in association with Glassbox Media. Send us your questions and comments at proofcrimepod@gmail.com. Follow us everywhere with the handle @proofcrimepod and on our website, proofcrimepod.com. Regular episodes drop on Mondays, and you can find sidebars on Thursdays. Thanks so much for listening.